My Mastodon is using too much storage space. I don't think there's any question we get more often than this at FediHost. So today we're going to go through a couple of common culprits. Let's have a look at Consultatron. So the first thing is relays. Over here on Consultatron, if we click on Preferences, scroll down to Administration, and then right down to the bottom you'll see Relays. Now, we have a relay added here. It's pretty common for admins of new Mastodon instances to go and add a relay so they can fill their instance up with content. That's why when you go onto the instance here and you look at the home feed, it's got lots of stuff going on. It's helpful because it means that your instance has things to look at and suggest for people to follow. You can get the impression that when you're getting an instance started, this is the best way for you to get up and running on the Fediverse. The problem is that relays are a total fire hose of information. It's just way too much for a solo instance or a small instance to handle, and will easily fill 50, 60 gigabytes of storage space on your server in media alone. And on top of that, it will fill your database with millions potentially of posts coming in from all across the Fediverse. So I would not recommend adding a relay like this. There are more focused relays which might appeal for you, but I cannot say that I would ever recommend going and adding a big general relay to a new Mastodon instance. But I can show you quickly a better way to do it. If we hit delete here and remove this relay, your storage is probably going to stop growing at this point and start to shrink over the next couple of weeks. If you instead go to relay.fedi.buzz, you can type in a tag here that you would like to follow. Instead of following maybe 100 gigabytes worth of stuff just generally on the Fediverse, we can narrow it down to a very specific tag. So in the case of Consultatron, we might say robotics is interesting to Consultatron. And you can grab that tag there, copy it, paste it into the relay, and you can guarantee that this filtered relay will use a fraction of 1% of what a general relay like Public Square would have used. And you can go through and tailor the content on the server so that it lines up with what you generally would be interested in seeing, or maybe what the community that you're hoping to build would be interested in. So, AI might be another tag for an organization like Consultatron, and maybe consulting. Between robotics, AI, and consulting, probably get, a couple of posts an hour, something far more manageable than the absolute fire hose of stuff that you're going to be getting if you sign up for a large relay with a huge amount of content in it. Something else you want to look at, especially if you've gone and added a relay, under administration, server settings, and content retention, is the media cache setting. So the media cache setting, if you are a small solo instance, you can probably get away with putting a lower number in here than what it would have by default. They recommend setting the value to at least 14 days. But for me, at least, and if this is a solo instance and you're in the same boat, I'm not going to look at anything that's older than 7 days for sure. That's just not the way I use Mastodon. I log in every day, I check what's happened, and then the next day I log in again, check what's happened since I last logged in. So I'm really checking it pretty much every 24 hours. There's no way that I'm going to be scrolling back through my timeline and looking at stuff that happened months ago. So in my case, I'd set this for 7 days. If you could go with 14, it depends on the way that you use Mastodon, the way that your users use Mastodon. If you're on a server and there are many other users, who knows, maybe some of them do only log in once every month. And so they want to have, a decent amount of cache in their timeline that they can look back on. But for me, at least, setting it to a lower number, that's something that you can do to reduce the amount of cache storage. Don't set it too low though, because it's kind of seen as rude. If you set this to 1 day and you're logging in and you're scrolling back through the timeline and looking at old posts that were a few days old, you're making your server go out and fetch lots of content from all these other servers on the Fediverse, which really increases their server load. So I'd say as a rule of thumb, think about that number as being the maximum amount of time that you usually take between logging in, and then maybe multiply it by 4. If I log in, sometimes I might do every second day. So 2 days, multiply it by 4, 8 days to be on the safe side. I doubt that I'm going to ever be making my server go out and refresh and pull media files off other instances on the Fediverse. So hit save there. If you aren't using relays and your content cache settings aren't crazy, like this hasn't been set to like 300 or something like that, then it's probably a good idea to have a look at who you're following. So this is obviously easier to do on a solo instance, but a solo instance would usually be where you are trying to be a little bit more price sensitive. What you want to do is open up your profile and have a look at who you're following. So some accounts are extremely active. Some accounts are actually bot accounts where they're just reposting everything tagged as whatever. So looking through these accounts, it's a good idea to go through, open them up, and then just see how frequently they post. So this one's pretty frequent. If we have a look at, say, the New York Times is extremely frequent, and it includes media files. You can see these images here. So you want to go through, have a look at who you're following and see if they've got like a high frequency of post, if they're posting a lot of videos, if they're posting a lot of images. Those are the things that are going to use up a lot of storage. So what you're looking for is accounts like this, AI feed here. This is an account that kind of almost functions like a relay. It's reposting anything that has AI or artificial intelligence attached to it. And so you can see like 14 minutes ago, 18 minutes ago, 31 minutes ago, an hour ago, lots of posts, lots of images. This is going to fill your cache with quite a lot of files. If you have a lot of these repost bot accounts that you're following, that's going to fill up your feed. So these will be the sort of things which you might want to consider unfollowing and be a little bit more intentional with what you're looking for. For example, if you're interested in artificial intelligence in Canada, maybe find a more specific tag, a more specific bot. Yeah, this is a kind of candidate for something that you might want to unfollow. Another thing you want to check for is duplicate accounts. This can happen quite easily as well. So what's happened with the Fediverse is a lot of people have set up bots to mirror content from Instagram or from their favorite news sources and put them on the Fediverse. And some of these mirrors and some of these bots have gotten quite a few followers. So when you search for something like CBC, you may not be getting the CBC's Flipboard account, which is kind of a way they seem to be pushing stuff out these days, and instead be getting the CBC's mirror account. So over here you can see CBC Windsor mirror, which is like a bot that's taking the RSS feed and putting it into Mastodon so it can be seen that way. And so you may end up with these accounts where CBC News, which is coming from Flipboard, actually has the CBC Windsor details. And you want to kind of go through and have a look at both and see if you need to be following a mirror anymore or if you can follow the Flipboard account directly. With all these copies and clones, it can be quite easy to end up following the same thing multiple times. So it's good to go through and go, all right, so I want the main CBC news feed. I don't want to have this unofficial clone anymore. Looking at like outlets and figuring out whether they're on the Fediverse or not, and then finding their official account and following that. So if I just want the main CBC feed, I can follow that. Here's the New York Times. Well, if I just want the real estate, then I don't need to have the main homepage feed, which would be more busy. And then the NPR, well, I'll use the actual official NPR Mastodon.social account. I'm just going to check to see that it's still active. Nope, it's not active, so they're using the Flipboard account. So instead of using this, I can use the Flipboard account, which is how I think they are posting these days. Yeah, okay, great. Now, if you're still finding that your storage is being used up, even though your timeline is not showing that many posts and you don't think that you're following that many accounts, you may want to check to see that you haven't actually muted an account that is producing a lot of content. So if you mute an account, it just means that for this particular user, they don't see it. So let's have a look. Click on muted users and we'll see that CBC News here has been muted. And, an example of that may be, wow, just there's too much stuff in my timeline. I'm going to mute this account for a while so that I can kind of get on top of things. And you may just forget that you've muted the account, and so you're still following the user. Your server's still receiving all of those images and all of those posts. It's just not showing them to you. So they're sitting there taking up space without you realizing. So it's probably a good idea, if you have permanently muted an account and the user is a kind of prolific poster like a news channel would be, to just unfollow the account rather than muting it. So that you don't use up those resources unnecessarily. And when you go to mute accounts, try using the mute for 7 days feature. And if in 7 days you find yourself muting the account again, it might be a good idea to unfollow it. So that covers 4 things that usually fill up your Mastodon storage. If you're still running into problems, what's probably going on is you're just following a lot of accounts. We're so used to, with the traditional social media, of just not having to factor in at all the resource usage of our behavior. I know, for example, when I upload YouTube videos, I upload massive, like 20, 30 gigabyte files that are fully uncompressed, basically lossless 4K video files. And I do this because it's Google's problem, if I upload a video to YouTube. Whereas when I started uploading files to PeerTube, I realized, well, if I upload a 20 gigabyte file, it's going to take hours to encode, and the server is going to be busy working on it the whole time. And if I do that all the time, then I have to pay for a much more expensive PeerTube instance than I would if I chose to encode the file in a smaller, visibly, unrecognizably different format. The difference between a 20 gigabyte file and a 2 gigabyte file to the human eye is absolutely negligible. So it caused me to kind of change the way I behave. And that happens with Mastodon too. If you're following 1,000 accounts, it's pretty unlikely that you're actually reading anything that people say. Following 1,000 reasonably active accounts is almost impossible to do while paying any attention to them. So you got to ask yourself, am I just following for the sake of following? You kind of have to make a decision. Do you want to pay for a power user experience, or do you want to change the way that you use the Fediverse? So the Fediverse kind of puts this decision in your hands. And I think it can be a bit of an adjustment for some people to realize that, well, yeah, you can have a cheap, under $10 a month Mastodon instance that a couple of people could even share on. But if you want to do that, you can't be following every single thing, adding every relay that you want. You can totally use the Fediverse on an instance that costs less than $10 a month. I mean, I do, and I enjoy myself. But in the end, if you want to do that, you may find yourself having to ask the question, how much do I really need to be following this many accounts? Do I really need to have that relay? Am I getting any use out of it? And I think a lot of people will find not really, it's pretty hard to actually read and monitor, getting 100 posts an hour, you might just be kind of doing it out of habit or something like that. But maybe ask yourself, if you're following 1,000 accounts, are you really reading all those posts? So I hope that helps. Let me know in the comments if you got to the bottom of it and figured out what needed to change so that you used less storage on your Mastodon instance. And yeah, I hope that this lets you keep using the Fediverse and save a bit of money at the same time.